Hi there, I'm John Lebensold, and today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be finishing up this shopping cart that we started in the last video as part of a series of videos for basically writing our own very simple PayPal shopping cart. So in the last video we started creating this class called shopping cart, and right now it only has two functions. One is add item and one is get items, and add item basically adds the product ID to a collection of items, which is just a fancy way of saying it's an array. And it's an associative array, which means that we've got these keys, which correspond to the product ID, and then next to it we have the amount, the quantity. So in our last video, we created this method called getShoppingCart, which essentially just, if I click on it, you'll see it takes us to a routine that will unserialize an existing session cart object, or it will create a new shopping cart object. So just like we get the shopping cart from session, we also need to set the shopping cart in session. So to do that, we're going to create another function, and this is going to be called set shopping cart. Hold on, we need to give it a function. And all it is it's going to go and it's going to say session cart equals serialize cart. So just like we unserialize here, we serialize here. And these are methods that basically work together to transparently compress and store the description of an object in session or in a database. Now that we have this, we can go back to our add to cart page. I'm just going to delete these shopping cart add item methods here. So we just have, okay, we check to see if the product ID exists. If it does, then we add it to the shopping cart. Now the next step is to, of course, set our shopping cart once we're done doing all of this funky business on the page. So I'm going to create another PHP block here. I'm just going to say set shopping cart, and I'm going to put in the shopping cart. So now this is the same shopping cart object that we're dealing with here. And at the end of the page, or just before we render the footer, we're going to take that shopping cart and we're going to stick it into set shopping cart, which it in turn will take that shopping cart, serialize it up, and stick it in session. So every time we go back to this page, we're essentially going to be pulling out the same shopping cart from session. Now that we've got this, I'm going to go back to my add to cart page, and we're just going to get rid of this var dump business for a second here. And what we really want to do now is we want to see what's in our shopping cart. Since right now it's all kind of just this object business, but we don't have a real good way of actually rendering it out into anything that is visible. So I'm going to create a table. I'm going to call this shopping cart. And in here, I'm going to have a table row, and I'm going to have a table header, calling this product ID. And I'm going to have another table header, call this quantity. And I'm going to have another table header. I'm going to call this amount. Okay, so now that we have the column set up for our shopping cart page, this is the checkout page that will take us to the PayPal page, where we post back all of our data and then it gets sent to the PayPal servers. We want to show all the products. So I'm going to create a new table row here, and I'm going to have a new table column, and then another one, and another one. And these are going to correspond to the amount, to the quantity, and to the product ID. I'm just going to put in product ID, quantity, and amount, and in dollars. I'm going to refresh that. So we've got a very simple table right here. Obviously, we need to replace this with the actual data that we're getting from our shopping cart object. So we have this shopping cart object. Let's put it to work. The first thing I need to do is I need to get all the items in the shopping cart. Now, we've already written a procedure that does this, and that's the getItems method in our shopping cart. So what it does is it returns a collection of product IDs. It just returns the keys from this items. I'm going to go back to my add to cart page, and I'm going to start with a for each statement. I'm going to say for each shopping cart, get items as product ID. And now I want to render something that looks very similar to this. So I'm going to turn this into essentially another mini template. I'm going to say output equals, and I'm just going to put that in there. And I'm going to wrap this up in a function, calling it render shopping cart row. Now, render shopping cart row is actually going to take in the shopping cart. It's going to take in the product ID. And it's going to take in something called the line item counter. Now, the line item counter is essentially a suffix that is added, it's a number, to keep the pairs of variables together for PayPal. So we have product 1, quantity 1, amount 1, product 2, quantity 2, amount 2. And so it knows how to keep them all together based on the line item counter, which is just a number, basically. So I'm going to create a function here, and I'm just going to say return output for now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace product ID here with an actual product ID. And I'm going to replace the quantity with the actual item quantity. So to do that, we're going to go to our shopping cart object. Now, if we want to do this intelligently with code hints, we can actually tell this function what kind of object to expect. So beforehand, we're just going to say shopping cart space and then shopping cart. So now Eclipse and also this function are expecting that shopping cart here is actually going to be a shopping cart object. It's going to be an instance of this class that we've defined here. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say shopping cart, and then when I do my little arrow, we're going to see add items and get items. Now, neither of those are really helpful for what we're trying to do, but what we can do is we can say get item quantity, and we can pass in the product ID. And that's going to be our quantity. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is the same shopping cart that we've been working with all up here, and it is specific to this one user. And we know that because it's all being stored in session, and session is handled on a per user basis. So if somebody comes in and is accessing the page and has their shopping cart, and somebody else comes in and accesses the page, then they're going to have their own shopping cart. And so even though it's the same class, it's the same code, it's actually being rendered differently, and the object is being maintained differently for different users. So let's create this getItemQuantity function. Now you'll notice I've been adding this word public to the beginning of these classes. And what that means is that other objects or other code outside of this class can access these functions, but they can't access things that are protected or private. So the outside of this class, any code outside of this class doesn't know that items exists, but it also doesn't care, it doesn't have to know. So if we look at this, we're actually creating an object and we're creating an interface, or a way of accessing and putting in data into this one object. It's a way of encapsulating all that information in a very simple and language-specific tool or class. So it's just a collection of functions, and we can also store data in there as well. So we're going to create a public function. We're going to call this getItemQuantity, and we're going to pass in the product ID. And all we're going to do here to get the item quantity, well, we already have the items, so we just have to say return this items and then product ID. Now we could also add some error checking code here too. We could check to see if the product ID exists. We could check to see if it actually is stored in the array key, or if the array key exists in this items, and then return 0. But for this simple example, I'm trying to keep these methods relatively small and simple, so I think we can get away with just this. Also, because we've only got one consumer, we've only got one method that's really calling this, we can assume that getItemQuantity is only going to be called for product IDs that already exist in getItems. So I think we're safe there too. So now I have the quantity, and I'm going to hit save. And what I can do here now is I can actually echo a render shopping cart row with the current shopping cart that I have, current product ID that I'm working with, and this line item counter. Now line item counter doesn't exist quite yet, so let's create that. We'll start that at 1, and then we'll increment it just using ++. Now for all of this to work, we're going to have to start the session. And I'm going to do that up in the functions file because I've got all this kind of bootstrapping code here anyways. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to create session start. And what this will do is this basically tells PHP to get ready to start storing session variables. Now if I refresh this page, you'll notice that every time I refresh it, the quantity goes up. And if I go back to index and I add linguine, for example, then we'll see that pasta starts going up as well. And if every time I refresh it, but we haven't lost tomato soup here. Now, this is all so far working so wonderfully. So let's fix up these links since it's kind of a pain to jump back and forth like that. So we know that the store is at index.php. We know that the cart is at add2cart.php. Let's also create one for clear cart. And in this case, for clear cart, we're going to go back to index.php. Actually, this should probably be just view cart, and then clear cart will be index.php clear equals 1. So we're just passing in this variable called clear, and if clear is set to 1, which in computer terms it means on or true, then we're going to clear the current shopping cart for this particular user. So the code for that is pretty straightforward. It looks a little something like this. So first we check to see if the request object or the request list has something called clear in it. And if it does, then we're going to go and, well, we're going to have to get that shopping cart again. So let's get that shopping cart first, actually. We're going to do get shopping cart. And we're going to go shopping cart, and we're going to do empty cart. Now again, empty cart doesn't exist yet, but we're going to go back to our shopping cart object, and we're going to do that, and we're also going to echo shopping cart emptied. Just going to put a little notification there, and I'm going to make that maybe an H2. And then after we've cleared the shopping cart, we should set it again, because if we don't, then when we go back to the view cart page, it'll still be there. So once we've made changes to the shopping cart, we're going to persist it. We're going to save it back into session. Now, I need to create this empty cart method. It's not too complicated, but it basically looks a little something like this. So we're going to create a public function. We're going to call this empty cart. And all it's going to do is it's going to reset the items. So we're going to say this items equals array. So we've just basically nuked whatever's in there. So I'm going to refresh this. Now if I go back to clear cart, it'll say shopping cart emptied. And if I go back to add to cart, you'll see that everything's been emptied and we're back to product ID tomato soup, quantity 1. And again, I can keep adding this, or I can go back to clear cart and I can empty it. So you've noticed that I've been stalling on setting the amount. And in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be calculating the unit cost and the shipping amount and creating the rest of this order form. We're also going to style it. And after that, we're going to set up the PayPal buttons. We're going to tidy up whatever is remaining in our form, and then we're going to start working with the PayPal sandbox to finish the shopping cart. Thanks for listening.